Castle in the Air by Diana Wynne Jones, read by John Sessions. Far to the south of the land of Ingiri, in the Sultanates of Rajput, a young carpet merchant called Abdullah lived in the city of Zanzib. As merchants go, he was not rich. His father had been disappointed in him, and, when he died, had left Abdullah just enough money to buy and stock a modest booth in the bazaar. The rest of his father's money, and the large carpet emporium in the centre of the bazaar, had gone to the relatives of his father's first wife. Abdullah had never been told why his father was disappointed in him. A prophecy made at his birth had something to do with it, but Abdullah had never bothered to find out more. Instead, from a very early age, he had simply made up daydreams that he was really the long-lost son of a great prince. It was a complete castle in the air, and he knew it. Everyone told him he had inherited his father's looks. He was a decidedly handsome young man, in a thin, hawk-faced way, and his character from his mother, his father's second wife, who had been a dreamy woman. The booth Abdullah bought, though small, turned out to be rather well placed. It was the first part of the bazaar the carpet-makers came to when they came into Zanzib from the desert, and a surprising number of them were ready to pause when a young carpet merchant rushed out into their paths and offered them bargains with most profuse politeness. In this way, Abdullah was often able to buy best-quality carpets before anyone else saw them, and sell them at a profit. In between buying and selling, he could continue with his daydream, which suited him very well. In fact, almost the only trouble in his life came from his father's first wife's relations, who would visit him once a month in order to point out his failings. "You're not saving any of your profits!" cried Abdullah's father's first wife's brother's son, Hakim, whom Abdullah detested, one fateful day. Abdullah explained that when he made a profit, his custom was to use that money to buy a better carpet. He had enough money to live on, and no need of more since he was not married. "Well, a young man like you should have at least 2 wives by now," cried Abdullah's father's first wife's sister, Fatima, whom Abdullah detested even more. "The more valuable your stock gets, the more likely you are to be robbed. Have you thought of that?" nagged Abdullah's father's first wife's uncle's son, Asif, a man whom Abdullah hated more than the first two put together. He assured Asif that he always slept in the booth and was very careful, at which his father's first wife's relatives shook their heads and went away. Abdullah sighed with relief and plunged straight back into his daydream. In it, he had been kidnapped from his palace at the age of 2 by a villanous bandit called Kabul Akbar. Kabul Akbar wore a gold ring in his hooked nose and carried a pistol with a silver-mounted stock. Abdullah was so frightened that he ran away into the desert, where he was found by the man he called his father now. Lately, however, the daydream had been concentrating on the princess to whom Abdullah had been betrothed at birth. She had perfect features and huge, misty dark eyes, and lived in a palace as rich as Abdullah's own, with magnificent gardens. Abdullah loved gardens, and he lost himself in waving fronds and scented walkways in the gardens of his princess. Or nearly. For he was interrupted by a tall man with a dingy-looking carpet in his arms. "You buy carpets, son of a great house?" this stranger asked. In Zanzib, where buyers and sellers always spoke to one another in the most formal and flowery way, this man's manner was shockingly abrupt. "That is so, O king of the desert," Abdullah answered. "You wish to trade with this miserable merchant?" "Not trade. Sell, O master of mats."
Sample complete. Ready to continue?